It's time for the Kim Hammer Show, where you'll learn how your state government affects you, your family, and community. Here's Kim Hammer.
Hey, good Saturday afternoon. Hope you're having a great day. As I always say, make it a good day. So glad that you're joining me here on the Kim Hammer Show. Just a friendly reminder that you can go up to www.thekimhammershow.com and be able to pick up on current events that I think might be of interest to you, and also be able to go back and watch the shows that we have. Today I've got Clint Lancaster. Talked about last week that I'd have Kim Slaughter on, who's running for the seat up there in Conway, but she was unable to be with us, and we'll have her on next week. Everything works out good, so we'll get her on next week. But we do have a pleasant surprise because we've got Clint Lancaster, who has been on the show before with me. He's been up in the north, the cold north, working on election stuff, and we were in a meeting the other night, and you said a few things that kind of sparked my interest, and I thought, well, maybe other folks might be interested in hearing about it too. So thanks for taking time out to be on the show today, Clint.
Well, thank you for having me again. I'm very honored to be here, and I enjoy coming on your show.
Great. Thank you. So you said about Wisconsin, you've been up in Wisconsin working on the election, and I'll be honest with you, maybe because it's kind of fallen off the radar screen, or everybody thinks, well, there's nothing else we can do, that's kind of gotten pushed to the side with everything else going on with COVID and all the other mess that we've got. But when you said that you're up in Wisconsin still working on the election thing, I thought, I want to hear about that. So I want to give you an open mic today, and let's talk about what is it that's still going on in Wisconsin that you're up there, and what are you doing up there?
Okay, that's great. I'll just kind of tell you everything I can think to tell you. So I believe it was March of 2020, the Wisconsin Assembly, which is their version of the House, passed a resolution charging the Committee on Campaigns and Elections with investigating the 2020 elections. And they held a lot of hearings and not very many city clerks. So it's important to note one thing. In Arkansas, the Secretary of State is in charge of elections. In Wisconsin, the Secretary of State is not in charge of elections. Instead, every square inch of Wisconsin is covered by a municipality, a city, a town, a village. And it is the clerk of that city, town, or village that runs the elections. And so they didn't have a whole lot of clerks that came and testified. And so the Speaker of the Assembly, Speaker Voss, Robin Voss, they created the Office of Special Counsel, and they hired former Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Michael Gableman to be the special counsel. And that was in September of 2020. And then in October of 2020, I was asked to join the special counsel, and I have been working as an attorney and an investigator for the special counsel investigating the 2020 elections.
Well, and I've had you on the show before, and you've talked about that and things that you found going on up there. And let me back up and just ask you this. Are people tired of hearing about this? Is this one of those things where people just can't let it die and they want to keep it alive? And even if they determine something has occurred or did occur, what fruitful event is going to come out of that? And are we just holding on to something that we need to let go? And I guess that was part of the reason when you said you were in Wisconsin, you guys are still looking at this for some reason, and what's going to be the beneficial results of what's going to come out of it?
That's a good question. So I don't know exactly what the beneficial results will be, but I will tell you that I think a lot of people, there's a lot of people who just know they don't know exactly what happened in 2020, but they know something happened. And you got some folks that say, oh, there was nothing wrong with the 2020 election. But, that's just, some people just keep saying, something's not right. And I can tell you that and I spoke to Justice Gableman a couple days ago. I'm headed back up there tomorrow on Sunday. And he cleared me he said, you can say anything you want. So I can tell you that there have been some startling discoveries in Wisconsin that indicate that election was not run fairly, and the count was not accurate. I call it, I personally, and I'm speaking for myself, I call it a black November. It's not a red November. It's not a blue November. It's a black November, because what they did effectively covered up the accurate count of votes.
So are you at liberty where you can talk through the process to what you know, and don't jeopardize any case or anything? I'm not going to ask you to do that. but at least walk us through what those things are that you have found that justifies the continuation of going into it the depth that y'all are.
Sure, I can speak on that. So we know a few things for sure. So number one, the Wisconsin Election Commission, which is their version of our state board of elections, they suspended some specific laws related to absentee voting in nursing homes. And so in Wisconsin, you have to send in special voting deputies to the residents of nursing homes who want to vote. One's a Republican, one's a Democrat. Only those people can help a person who is a residential care resident vote. Well, the Wisconsin Election Commission voted to suspend that statute, even though the governor told them that he couldn't do it, and WEXN, an executive agency, they still suspended that statute. So instead of having two people go in to make sure residents aren't being taken advantage of in how they're voting absentee, they just sent the ballots to the nursing homes. And so all these ballots showed up at the nursing homes. And what we found just in Racine with the Racine County investigation was that the guy said something like, we usually get 3 to 5 every election cycle. This time we had like 10 to 40. I'm like, whoa, 10 to 40 residents that are in nursing homes who haven't voted since like the 1980s suddenly wanted to vote in this election. And so we did some investigation into that, and we found that there was widespread, what we believe will be widespread abuse in nursing homes of people who had dementia. I mean, they couldn't tell you who their kids were. They can't tell you what they ate for lunch. They can't tell you who's the current president. They can't tell you anything. Some of them were hallucinating unfortunately at the end stages of life. And this person voted. And we found one person who voted, and that person was dead. They had died before they could have cast that ballot. And so the investigation asked, well, how did you do this? And he said, well, we would, the nursing home staff, we just trusted them to do the right thing. Well, number one, Wisconsin law says the nursing home staff they're forbidden from helping a resident. Not only are they forbidden, if they've worked in a nursing home for the last 3 years, they're forbidden. So that's just how much the legislator wanted to protect absentee voting in nursing homes. So how did they help these people vote? Well, they said we'd ask them who the last person they remember voting for president. And so if you're telling me that my mom could only remember voting for Robert Kennedy or for John F. Kennedy, you voted her Democrat? And so absolutely. If she said John F. Kennedy, we voted her on the party line for Democrats. And so they would say, well, what if they didn't know? They said, well, put them in front of a TV program and come back in a little bit and ask them. Or hold up the ballot. We would hold up the ballot and we'd say, Miss Smith, which one do you want? And they would kind of point, and the one we thought that they had pointed closest to was the one that we voted them for.
Now, when you're saying we, who's we?
The nursing home staff.
So were they under oath testifying to this, or who is it that you're saying that we did this? Was it the nursing home staff, or who was it?
The nursing home staff is who I'm referring to that helped the residents vote. There was no outside people from the clerk's office allowed into the nursing homes. They sent the ballot to the staff. And it was the nursing home staff who helped these residents vote in violation of Wisconsin law.
And I guess they were saying that because they wouldn't let them in because of COVID.
That's true. And the Racine County sheriff said that really didn't make sense to him because they let in like 30 DoorDash delivery people, Grubhub, the guy who cleans the fish tank. He came in. There was a guy that cleaned the bird cage. He came in regularly. Job applicants came in. But nobody was allowed in from the clerk's office to ensure that these ballots were cast fairly.
All right. What else?
So also in the nursing homes, if the voter didn't vote for whatever Miss Smith or Miss Jones was having a bad moment, they would just fold that ballot up and leave it sitting open and unsecure. And it would just be sitting there for anybody to vote, for anybody to look at, for anybody to take. And so that was also a major problem. The problem with absentee voting is people are of the opinion that absentee voting is a right. Absentee voting is not a right. Absentee voting is a privilege. And both the United States Supreme Court and the Wisconsin Supreme Court have said that. I would think the Arkansas Supreme Court would say that if they ever had the opportunity to take it up. The right to vote happens on election day at the polls. that's where you have the right to vote. And so there are a lot of laws related to absentee balloting because there is so much, they're so vulnerable to being exploited. And that was found by the Carter Baker Commission, a commission of former President Carter, and Baker was under Reagan, and they did a massive investigation into what's going on with voting. And they found that absentee ballots are where you're going to have the problems, and that's where we had the problems in Wisconsin.
Okay. So you're dealing with the nursing homes, and what else?
So we have nursing homes. And then I have been heavily involved in what I think I've done a lot. So I do two things. I got two hats I wear up there. One, I do litigation for the special counsel. I'm involved in some cases, or a case with the special counsel in Waukesha County. And so I do some litigation, but I also do some investigation. And on the investigation side, I have been deeply involved with the people who came to Wisconsin for the 2020 elections and whether or not a ballot harvesting application that you would exist in. When I say ballot harvesting application, I'm talking like a smartphone or a tablet app.
Yeah, expand on that, because you talked about that at the meeting the other night, and that just kind of blew me away, but it also intrigued me. So talk about the app.
Okay, so to give you a little bit of understanding about the app, you first have to understand who came to Wisconsin. And so there was Zuckerbucks. Okay, Zuckerberg gave like $419 million to two groups. One was the Center for Tech and Civic Life, and one was the Center for Election Innovation and Research, CEIR. And so CTCL gave around $12 million to the 5 largest cities in Wisconsin. Okay, that would be Green Bay, Madison, Milwaukee, Kenosha, and Racine. And so once they gave this money, the National Vote at Home Institute sent in a couple of people. One of them, his name is Michael Spitzer Rubenstein, and he was what they called a grant mentor. And so for some reason, suddenly there's like this huge vacuum of special interest groups, private special interest groups who call themselves nonpartisan, but really aren't nonpartisan. You can't be nonpartisan when you got $72 million from Mark Zuckerberg to distribute around for increased absentee balloting, because that increased absentee balloting is by its nature a liberal progressive concept. And so these people came in, and for whatever reason, the Wisconsin Election Commission was really just weak and not present in putting forth a leadership role in elections, and it allowed these special interest groups to run rampant. And so they got in, and the Wisconsin voter rolls contained by the state are kept on a system called WisVote and Badger Books. That's their poll books. And so what happened was we had emails where Spitzer Rubenstein was asking the Milwaukee election commissioner, hey, can I have direct access to WisVote? We can make it so you don't have to run these reports every day. We can put an API in there. And an API, what that is it's an acronym that means it's a way they connect to the system to get information from it. And the Milwaukee commissioner said, no, I'm just not comfortable. Doing that. I'm not comfortable giving you access to the system. Well, a few days later, Spitzer Rubenstein says, well, don't worry about it, Claire. We found it through one of our other partners. We don't need that anymore, and you don't have to run the daily reports. So based off that, I was able to conclude that they got direct access to WisVote and Badger Books. Because
how would they have got that? You're getting to it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, they got it. They got it from the clerks. So some city clerk somewhere gave him an API into WisVote and Badger Books. And now that seems a little bit crazy. And so I'll also preface this by saying I watched Megan Wolf, who is the Wisconsin Election Commission's administrator. She's the civilian employee for the appointees. She told the commissioners that no city has access to statewide WisVote data. It's just they only have it for their city. But our investigation, and that's going to come out here at the end of the month for our final report, will debunk that. The cities had statewide access. And so all they needed was one API to one city, and suddenly you got it for the whole state. So from the whole state, they now have access to everybody's information. And what they wanted was specific information. They wanted to know who had requested an absentee ballot, who had requested it and not returned it, who was eligible to request one, okay, and then who was who had a problem with their ballot, or a certification problem that needed to be, quote, cured, fixed so the vote would count. And then they got that information and they had it broken down by race, age, gender, residency, you name it. They had everything Wisconsin had on them, they had. And so they took that and they put that into an application.
And when you say application, you talk about like an app on your phone.
Yes, like an app on your phone.
Okay.
And so, and how we know this is they communicated, and these are all public emails. You can go to the chair of the Committee on Campaign and Elections, or to our website, which is wielectionreview.org, and these documents are there for you to look at yourself.
Give me that website again.
wielectionreview.org. And so these are emails that we have obtained from public records requests and things of that nature. And you can see these emails where they're communicating with a company called QuickBase, which is a Massachusetts company that has a no-code platform to create applications. And what that means is you don't have to write computer code for every single specific application. It's a much easier way to work. They also worked with a company called U.S. Digital Response from California, who helped them with GIS issues, which is Government Information System mappings, very complex maps. The city of Milwaukee assigned an IT person who is a GIS expert into giving these people the census-based GIS maps about where people lived and what their race was, and then they even would explain how to tell what their address was, and so they gave all this information, and I always thought, man, this is just all the information you need for an app. Well, and then Michael Spitzer Rubenstein introduces everybody in Wisconsin to a guy named Ari Steinberg. So Ari Steinberg is currently the chief software engineer for Airbnb, but prior to that, he was a software engineer for Facebook. Now, if you think it's a coincidence that Mark Zuckerberg has given $416-something million to help these states, these swing states, and lo and behold, here's Ari Steinberg. So I got to looking at Ari Steinberg. Ari Steinberg had a website called gaballot.org. And gaballot.org, which was still up, a couple weeks ago when I last looked, got information from Georgia, and it would populate a website about who was eligible to vote, who hadn't voted, and he would encourage people to go out and contact those people. And so I kept looking, and Ari Steinberg is from Washington State. Okay, but he's also not just concerned about Georgia, a state he doesn't live in and can't vote in, but he's concerned about Pennsylvania. He's so concerned about Pennsylvania that he creates an app called Drive Turnout. And what Drive Turnout would do was it would take information from Pennsylvania's voter database and it would populate that into an application. And what he said was, we just give you this information. You can communicate with this person about how they should vote, however you feel is appropriate. So and he tells you how. Go into Facebook. It would sync up your Facebook contacts, your phone address book, to all this information, so you could just send this person a message. Now, I cannot imagine how, well, I guess I can, a voter who's not voting or would vote for Trump hears from a liberal person who suddenly knows how they did not vote or how they had voted in the past or anything like that, and says, you horrible person, you voted for Trump. I'm going to tell everybody, no, I'll vote for Biden. Now, I'm speculating, but I don't think that information should be available for these people just to contact voters about how they voted or tell them what to do. And, if you think about it, if you're at the polls on election day, they don't let people come up and talk to you that way as you're getting ready to vote or considering a vote. So it shouldn't be permitted in an absentee setting. What's funny to note about that is Drive Turnout was rejected by the Apple App Store. Google didn't have a problem with it, but Apple rejected it. And it took them like 10 days to reject it. And what they said was Drive Turnout violated the terms and conditions of the Apple App Store because it used data about individuals that didn't come from the individuals. So, in other words, Apple was more concerned about voter integrity and security than the clerks who were giving away this data. So, when Ari Steinberg got to Wisconsin and I saw that he had arrived, and I backtracked this, I've got an app developer from Facebook who has already developed an app. They're communicating with QuickBase and USDR and the city of Milwaukee, and the clerks are giving them information. I just knew there was an app out there. And then I happened to find it, which I think is just crazy. You know, sometimes people can't help but talk. But I actually happened to be sitting at home. I was home with Jen, my wife, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to see this. Well, what we saw was a guy named Harrison Hirsch, who was the developer for QuickBase, put up a YouTube video about the app in Wisconsin. I mean,
You ever watch the movie The Pelican Brief?
I have not read the book.
Okay, go ahead.
But I mean, and they were very, very proud of it. But what we saw in the Facebook video, which is also available on our website, wielectionreview.org, what we saw was the guy was talking about how it was developed. And when he opened up the first page, it talked about COVID numbers. It had a little map. It had broken down charts by tract. It was a bar chart. And so they were like, they called them tracts, which I have determined are specific geographic locations. And in this tract is broke down data about race, who's white, who's black, who's Hispanic. And then a little bit further down, they had the total number of absentee ballots that had been requested and ones that had certification problems. In other words, if you didn't sign the certification on the ballot right, it doesn't get counted. So you get a chance to contact that voter and say, hey, you need to come cure your ballot. You need to fix this, or we can't count your vote. And you saw some of that in Pulaski County in 2020, which was about the only place that I know that it happened, where people were contacting voters saying, hey, you got to come fix this or your vote's not going to count. And there wasn't people from the clerk. I think it was private people. So in Wisconsin, they had all this information compiled. And then there was a map, an interactive map that you could highlight. You could zoom in. And then what's even crazier about it is you could tell the app to filter data on the map. So you could tell, you could click, I want absentee ballots from military voters or just non-military voters that have been requested, not returned, and the gender, address, and sex or race of the person who had requested that ballot. And so once you stuck those in there, you would get little dots on the map, all right, with a specific color. And that dot on the map represented that person's home address where he or she lived, and this related to those filtered terms from the WisVote system. So basically, you would know who was a black voter or an African American voter that had a ballot problem or who had not returned their ballot, and you knew their exact location on the map. So now that sounds not too horrible yet, but I've specifically mentioned black or African American voters because they had another little section down there broken down solely by black or African American voters in the absentee setting. And they said that they were specifically targeting those voters because of historic racial inequality.
Now, who's they?
That would be the people who created the app, the QuickBase, Spitzer Rubenstein, and we would believe CTCL, since they funded that. They were only interested in using that data from WisVote for a specific race of humankind.
Is that assumption, or did they say that under oath?
Well, they didn't say it under oath because they refused to talk to us. They say their election was so great and so wonderful, the model of elections to be held around the world, but they don't want to answer any questions about it.
Okay. Tell you what, we got to take a break. Certainly, I think that folks aren't going to go anywhere to hear the rest of the story and what else you found up there. All right, you're listening to The Kim Hammer Show. You can go up to the website at www.thekimhammershow.com and pick up all information that might be relevant to your life that you'd be interested in knowing. And again, that website, if you want to, and that website that you're referring to is up there now. People can go up to it, the wielectionreview.org.
That's correct.
Okay. And who puts out that website?
That website is maintained by the Office of the Special Counsel.
Okay.
So us.
Okay, very good. All right, so that's wielectionreview.org if you want to go look at that while we take a break. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show. Hope you're having a great Saturday. My guest today is Clint Lancaster, who's an attorney. Has been on the show before, is working with the special counsel up in Wisconsin, continuing to investigate at the legislature's request. Am I understanding that right?
That's correct.
Okay, at the legislature's request. So just so you know, this is not a vindictive group that is trying to stir up something. I mean, this is a legislative branch that just wants a thorough understanding of what went on in Wisconsin. So pick up on your story about the app that was developed and how it was being used.
Sure. And while you're mentioning that, we are 100% funded by the legislature. We are not getting private funding. We don't have any private influence. We work for the legislature and no one else. So, yes. So we were talking about the app and how they were really focused on Black and African American voters. And what we have been able to determine was that they weren't trying to cure absentee ballots for Caucasian voters. If a white voter had a problem with their ballot, they didn't care. They didn't contact that person. There is ample evidence that they contacted minorities, I guess what some people would call racial minorities. I just think I'm personally appalled. I mean, here we have race-based discrimination, or at the very least, race-based favoritism. And that came from private companies who administered the Wisconsin elections in violation of the law because the clerks let them do it. And on top of that, when they got in there, they displayed a racial favoritism. And I think that the one thing that should concern everybody is at some point in America, we have to stop making excuses for racially motivated actions, whether it's a hate crime or a health issue. You just have to, at some point, any form of racism that's allowed to continue for any reason will only propagate the system.
And it'll only make racism worse.
I agree.
Because it creates the division and the usage of a race to a personal advantage instead of a basic right versus wrong.
That's correct. And it just shouldn't exist. I mean, you should help people because they're humans, not because they're Black humans or they're white humans or the brown humans. And I think I'm appalled that we would have groups come in and target those. Now, a lot of people will say, well, they targeted that specific race because that specific race tends to vote Democrat. And I understand that. I understand that, a lot of people will not come to the polls on election day. They, quote, sit on their right to vote. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to deeply change and liberalize the voting scheme for absentee voting to reach more voters who will not come to the polls to exercise their right. And they do that by saying absentee voting is a right, and it's not. So that's what the app showed. I was really just shocked at what I saw because I believe, and our investigation has not had the time and will not have the time to finalize this issue. But I found communications which indicated that they were hiring groups, and they admitted they hired these people. They called them voter navigators. Okay, a voter navigator would contact or go out and help somebody cure an absentee ballot. And so I believe that what they did was they took this app and they gave it to these people, coupled with the fact that some of these cities bought hundreds of Acer tablets, cheap tablets that are like cheap iPads, to give to workers. Okay, this is the exact type of application that would go on an Acer tablet. And so what I believe they did is they used their voter navigators to use this app to go to people who had problems and offer to fix the problems. And I think further what they did is that when they went to somebody who hadn't returned their ballot, think about this, Senator Hammer, you're sitting at home, you're watching college football, sometime in October on a Saturday, the Razorbacks are winning, and all of a sudden here come 3 people knocking on your door and saying, Senator Hammer, there's a problem with your ballot. What? How do you know there's a problem with my ballot? Well, there's a problem with your ballot. It's that you haven't returned it. Do you still have that in there somewhere? Yeah, I have that. Well, can you fill it out real quick and return it? In fact, there's a drop box down the street. You want me to take it and put it in the drop box for you? Now, if that happened, if I could prove that happened, which I think I can if I had more time, then I could prove that that ballot harvesting absolutely occurred, and that is a felony in Wisconsin to take a ballot from anybody that is not your own or a clerk. And so,
Are you going to ask for more time?
That's not my area. That's Justice Gableman's area.
What's his number? I'll call him.
Well, anyway. You'd love to hear from you. You might get a chance to talk to him on your show. I think he'll come on your show when March sometime, once this final report comes out.
Okay.
But yes, we would love to have more time. But there's a lot of moving parts to it, and I know that what I do is I focus on what I'm told to do, and I do it well, and that's all. And I'm told to investigate this and help with litigation. So. But yeah, I would love to find that. And I'll tell you why I think it also happened in Georgia. And let's kind of talk for a second about ballot drop boxes. As you know, I'm the Republican Party's designee to the Saline County Election Commission. And I have told these people in Wisconsin, the concept of an absentee ballot drop box is foreign to me. All right. The concept that you would randomly throughout the city place drop boxes for people to come put their absentee ballot in is crazy to me. Okay. Absentee ballot drop boxes did not exist in Wisconsin prior to 2020, but with CTCL Zuckerbucks, they bought them and they installed them. Okay. And they did the same thing in Georgia. All right. Ballot drop boxes in Georgia. They found the equivalent of a voter navigator who was paid $40,000 during the election to collect absentee ballots and put them into drop boxes at night.
Why would he not get charged with a felony?
I don't know. So I know the Georgia Secretary of State is investigating that issue.
Okay.
They haven't reached out to me for my help. I'm still focused in Wisconsin until the end of the month. So I don't know. But the fact that he would admit it, if I was the prosecutor, I'd give him immunity just for admitting it. Overall, a guy stuffing ballot boxes with absentee ballots is bad. What's worse is whoever it was that funded him and told him where to go to get them.
Right.
And so
follow the money, follow the vote.
That's right. And so, I believe that this system, that the same thing happened in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And I think that scheme got put into place.
Have those legislatures taken any thought, to do what the Wisconsin legislature did to fund investigation like what y'all have done?
The Georgia?
Yes.
I don't know. I do know that there's been some communications about what's happened in Michigan, what's happened in Pennsylvania, what's happened in Georgia. To the extent of those, I don't know. I do know that from what I am told, the Wisconsin investigation is light years ahead of any other investigation in the country. We know more about what they did and how they did it than anybody.
At the end of the day, and I want to come back to the app and ask you a couple of questions, but at the end of the day, the undoing President Biden being in office is not a realistic goal. Somebody going to jail, kind of like the movie National Treasure, somebody needs to go to prison. I mean, all the way up to the top of who funded it. Is that the strategy? Is that going to be the results of that investigation? Or will that be turned over to the Attorney General of the state of Wisconsin to pursue charges? Or what's going to be the outcome, if you're at liberty to say?
Well, I'll tell you this. It's not going to the Attorney General of Wisconsin. That guy's name is Josh Call. Okay,
You don't want it going to him.
Well, prior to it going to him, he worked for a law firm called Perkins Coie. Now, Perkins Coie happens to be the same law firm that represented Hillary and the same law firm that represented Joe Biden in almost every election challenge in the country. Okay, Mark Ilias or whatever his name was, I think he was from there. He's got no more interest in fact, he's actually suing us. The Attorney General is, to stop our investigation. So we're not going to be talking to him.
I'm not a rocket science or anything, but the Attorney General is suing the legislature of the state of Wisconsin?
Yeah, so he's doing it on behalf of.
Cut the budget.
He's doing. I know. I've mentioned that. I said, hey, why don't we cut the budget on
Use
this?
that power of the purse business, man.
But yeah, he's doing it on behalf of the Wisconsin Election Commission. That's his plaintiff. But I got strong feelings on that, and we're embroiled in litigation, and that would probably be a topic I shouldn't go too deeply
let's stay
into.
away from that. Let's not get you in trouble.
Yeah, but no. So in Wisconsin, like in Arkansas, the only person who can bring criminal charges is your district attorney. We call them prosecuting attorneys here. No one else can do it. The Racine district attorney has been reviewing the Racine investigation on nursing homes for quite some time now. I don't know what she will do, but
why would the feds not get involved if indeed, there's issues of race or, where they were targeted? Seemed like a theme in a particular party to target certain races. But why would the feds not get involved in that other than Joe Biden as president of the feds?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I can't see, for whether you think the president has mental acuity or not, I can't see him sending in the DOJ to investigate the people and the mechanisms that got him elected. That's just the kind of self-interested thing you don't see. Secondly, the legislature is in charge of elections pursuant to the United States Constitution. So the legislature has the time, place, and manner of elections. And so the feds are very hesitant to get involved in that unless there is a civil rights violation. So,
well, and that's where I was going at is if this app is proven to have targeted, why would they not go at it on the basis of civil rights violation?
I think they should, but I can't answer that. I would hope they would. I really would, but I don't know. I know that what we're doing is we're not trying to prosecute anybody. We have publicly said that we know of no mechanism to overturn the election in Wisconsin and swing it back to Trump. But what is important, and I talked to a friend of mine named Josh Manning, who's with the Western Journal, and he told me that he lives in Arizona. And he said that his opinion is millions of Republicans have lost hope in the election. They don't believe their vote counts. And, there's a real problem when your voting base doesn't believe their vote counts. You know what they do?
They don't vote.
They don't vote. And so what we want to do is restore the public confidence in Wisconsin's elections. We want people to know, hey, this is what happened, okay, or this didn't happen. The election was great, just like they say. And we wanted to be able to tell them that this is what happened, or this is how you got to fix it so that votes will count in the future.
Win or lose, at least your votes, the integrity of your vote counted, which I am proud of Arkansas through everything that we got done this last legislative session with the team effort. We're number 4 or tied with number 4 as far as the heritage, and we're already working on what we've got to do to get to number 1. So that at least people in Arkansas will know that their vote is protected. The problem is when Arkansas may be a number 1, you got a Wisconsin that may be a number 49. And if population outweighs, I think that's the challenge. And that's why it's good to go into these states and to pull back the carpet and see what dirt's underneath there. And then hopefully people will go to prison and things will line up, or those legislative branches will do what they've got to do to instill the things that would protect us. But how do you protect against somebody that dumps millions of dollars in your state and puts that temptation in front of you to do what's been done?
Well, I think that we'll have some recommendations or suggestions about what they should do. I think that the easiest, my personal opinion, not speaking for the special counsel, my personal opinion is the easiest and fastest way to kill it is to say, if you want to pump private money into elections, you give it to the government for the government to distribute equally. And that's not going to, that would have never worked in Wisconsin because outside of those 5 cities, outside of those, you would have never, Trump lost Wisconsin by 20,000 something votes. I don't think that they would pump that money in because they couldn't get those votes.
Yeah. And in Arkansas with the law that, if I'm not mistaken, one of the laws we passed this last session was that if outside money is given from a private source, whatever, that it has to go to the government entity so that there's transparency and accountability. But the money that they gave up there, they gave to the government entity, which was the cities and the townships, right?
That's correct. They gave them to the city clerks.
But they didn't give it proportionate to each one of them. They targeted where their money went which I would speculate that was where they thought they could get the votes in order to take the state.
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you, I don't think that a town like Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, or Appleton, Wisconsin, or some of those, you're not gonna. I don't think you're gonna get Biden voters in a majority in those regions. I mean, it's a lot like Arkansas is. We have a lot of red territory, and we have a little dot here in Little Rock and a little dot in Fayetteville that are both red. So you can't get Saline County, Arkansas to swing to Biden. So why would you give them money?
Right. Which just goes to prove the point they targeted those things for ill intent.
Of course, I believe that.
All right. So, well, whether you believe it or not, you got the evidence to back it up?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what counts, because we can believe different things, but what evidence backs up what you believe is what you got to be able to defend. On the app a while ago, what's illegal about it versus what's just savvy about it, that we got out strategized, that we got, that we got it handed to us?
Yeah, that's well, so here's one of the things that is illegal is a broad term. So when I'm going to pick the word unlawful instead, if that's okay with you. I don't want to change your question without.
No, that's it. Hey, what law did the app break versus just they were just more savvy? That's all.
So the app itself doesn't break a law, but how they got the data breaks a law. Okay.
So they broke the law to get the data to create the app.
Yep. So in Wisconsin, if you want that information out of WizVote, and you're not a racist, app developer, you have to pay $12,500 per day. $12,500 per day, and you get a 3 to 5 day lag. It doesn't just come out, and that's only for 1 day. So if you wanted 1 day's worth of data, $12,500, wait about a week. However, they got it for free,
real time, and
free in real time, and that is just crazy. There is no way.
But did they break the law?
The clerks broke the law by not charging them for the data.
So the clerks will be the ones that potentially could go to jail, whereas those that they were accomplices to helping won't necessarily go to jail. But what can be done to punish those that gave the clerks the money to get it for free?
So we're talking in hypothetical terms. Those clerks, there's not a criminal penalty for that I'm aware of, but there might be coming up. But also keep in mind that you're looking at the elements of a conspiracy. When you have a criminal conspiracy or even a civil conspiracy, you don't have to have direct action by all parties. So if Zuckerbucks funded an app that they got data from the clerks, and then that app went to a ballot harvester who took one ballot to a Dropbox, then now you have conspiracy to commit. You have all the elements, and it's a little more formal than that, okay? So Matt Campbell can make fun of me later, but I'm just saying this is a broad...
He doesn't listen to this show. Come on, man.
He should. So this is a broad type of thought process, but when you have multiple pieces working in harmony to effectuate an illegal outcome, you have accomplice liability and you have conspiracy. And so ultimately, if the investigation could go on and we could prove widespread ballot harvesting through the application, like I think they did in Georgia, or they will in Georgia, then now you could, in theory, if you could get a district attorney in Wisconsin with the cojones to do it, you could charge all those people with a crime, which is really what I think, regardless of crime or not, I think something should be done. That was not a fair situation, and I'm picking my words carefully here. I'm not alleging that anyone did a crime. I'm talking that it's possible that if you could prove all these things, you would be able to prove a crime. But something's got to change, or it's not going to get any better.
Right. Whether it's a crime or not, the fact of the matter is it does not reflect what we as a nation should want when it comes to voting.
That's right. That reminds me, I heard this criticism the other day that the special counsel does not have a single Democrat on their staff. Well, we can't find a single Democrat who thinks that there's anything but perfection.
Process elimination. They chose to eliminate themselves from it.
That's right. I mean,
did you offer to hire any?
Well, I don't know. I'm not in charge of hiring, but I do know that Well, is there some up there who talk about how we don't have any Democrats? Well, find me one that wants to investigate and thinks something might be wrong.
You would love to have one.
Well, it's not because we're not including people.
Yes. All right, so we're down to about 7 minutes. So we got the nursing home. How many votes came out of the nursing homes? Do you know?
Don't know for sure on that, and that also wasn't my area to investigate. But
Okay.
I think that if you had all the nursing homes across Wisconsin, it would be a pretty substantial number, I would think.
Be interesting to see if it was more than 20,000.
I feel that between the illegal absentee ballots that should not have been collected at drop boxes, which the Wisconsin Supreme Court has now said drop boxes aren't constitutional, but they're going to leave them up for February's election.
We don't have them here, thanks to a law we passed. So to our voters, don't worry about that, okay?
But for them, so I think between the absentee ballot drop boxes, the nursing homes, and just what the app could show, you would easily, I think, have 20,000 votes.
Okay. Any other quick areas that you investigated that caused you concern?
That's pretty much my main areas of investigation. That's what I have handled. I'll tell you, I would warn everybody, when you hear a nonprofit organization say they are nonpartisan, you should run because they're probably lying.
Yeah. Trees known by its fruits. So how many other investigators are there?
So there is 1, 2, 3 other attorneys, and that does not include Justice Gableman, who's also a licensed attorney. And we have some tech support people that are really good. We have a guy named Zach Nemo. He's got a long last name, but Nemo is like the office manager, executive assistant. And then that's pretty much, I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, but
that's okay. So let me ask you, it sounds like the investigation is going to be out of money in a couple weeks. What percentage is left unaddressed that if you had more time and more money, you'd be able to take it further?
Well, to be clear, the issue is not money. The money is still there, but the Speaker Voss has assigned a final report date, with the final report being due by March 1st. And that's because the Wisconsin Legislature is going out of session, and that's when they adjourn, and they want the report in by the adjournment date. So
I would imagine to create whatever laws they've got to do in order to protect the election. Or a special session, whatever they do up there.
I don't know. I'm sure there's a political reason behind it, but I try not to worry about things that don't affect me.
Sure. Well, maybe if, what I would hope is that you would get the report turned in, they would see it, they could make whatever corrective measures they've got to make through legislation, or however they're going to handle the results, and buy you some more time to be able to go in there and finish. Because the bad thing about it is whatever you don't finish looking at, that's where they're going to come back, and that's where they're going to continue to do what they, intend to do.
But to answer your question, I'd say 40% completed, 60% still out there, maybe more. And the reason for that is only the city of Kenosha, Wisconsin, has fully responded to our subpoenas. Instead, everybody else has sued us.
That says something.
I agree.
That says something right there alone. We don't want you to find out what we know.
Well, and they know that if they just stall long enough, we'll run out of time. But isn't that crazy? I mean, here are these people who say everything they did was great, it was legal, it was perfect, it was wonderful. Well, great, I'd like to ask you some questions. Oh, you can't do that. Yeah, well, here's a subpoena. Well, I'm going to sue you to say that your subpoena's not legal. Of course, you get tied up in litigation and,
the stall game.
Yep, and that's what's getting us.
Okay. Well, hopefully that'll be our prayer, that hopefully you'll have a window of opportunity to go up there. All right. Now the website, again, wielectionreview.org. And what are we going to find when we go on that website? I didn't bring my laptop in. What are we going to find?
There's some links that go to some news stories, and it's broken down by city. So if you want to look at city-specific documents, we're still adding and updating content. But Nemo tells me that the quick base video that I talked about with the app, where you go see it yourself, it's up there.
Okay. We got 2 minutes. So real quick, if this is a strategy, it wouldn't have been applied just to Wisconsin. So theory or fact, or don't comment at all. If other states that had questionable elections results were to take what Wisconsin has done and duplicate it over to Georgia, Pennsylvania, do you think you'd find some of the same things there?
I think so, because the same people, Ari Steinberg he was active in those states. The same law firms were out there. I believe they developed a methodology and they took time doing it. It's David Pluff's book. David Pluff was the Obama campaign manager. This is his strategy in his book about how to beat Trump. So this strategy's out there, and I think it's implemented. I think that when they need 20,000 votes in the future for a Democrat, this is where they're going to get them.
Unless we can cut it off.
Correct.
We need to talk about how to cut it off. Legally, what process? Well, I know. I mean, we need to figure out how to cut it off, and maybe that's the Republican Party's challenge: figure out how to cut it off, and let's get into those states, because otherwise they'll just pick them off one at a time. The one thing I would just want to close out by saying is, in spite of all this, people still need to get out and vote.
That's correct.
It's one thing if it's taken from you. It's another thing if you give it away.
That's right.
And I'd rather give my vote than just roll over and let it be taken away. And hopefully through what you've been involved in and others, and if we can get the justice on after the March 1st date, would love to get him on, and maybe that'll open it up a little bit more.
Thank you for having me.
All right. My guest today has been Clint Lancaster, attorney, friend of mine as well, has worked up there on special counsel in Wisconsin on this. We'll try to get the justice on back after the report comes out. And again, you can go up to the KimHammerShow.com. We'll get that website up there in case you didn't have a pen to write it down, KimHammerShow.com, and you can check out their website. And we'll look forward to having you back. Thanks, Clint.
See ya.
Thanks for joining me. Have a great Saturday.